Hello folks, this is Greg Gilbert, host of Python's Paradise, and tonight we're going to dive into March of 1996 film reviews. Hope you enjoyed January and February. We take about a half a dozen films and I tell you some stories, some ratings, and whether or not any of the stuff's worth seeing. I do talk about some bad ones as well as the good ones. But March, of course, we're still in the thick of winter, and still some interesting films come out. Now, we're going to start with March 8th, where I got 3 titles to talk about. And the first one I'm going to talk about, I actually went to twice in the theater, because I absolutely loved it, and I've reviewed, as of right now, I've interviewed one person from it, Francesca Cruz, from The Birdcage. Now, The Birdcage, of course, was a Mike Nichols film. Of course, he's done some wonderful stuff in his filmography, going way back to the 60s with Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf and The Graduate. Well, The Birdcage, add that to the list, and of course, it stars Robin Williams as a gay nightclub owner, and his star attraction, of course, is the man he's with in drag, played by Nathan Lane. And think of the plot involves his son, through previous marriage, obviously, was getting married to a woman whose parents are in politics, played by Gene Hackman and Diane Wiest. Now, the strongest part of this film, is the performances. Robin Williams, I think, delivers the best performance in the film. He keeps everything leveled, and yet he's very, very funny. And he's a guy that just stands by who he is, despite the fact that his son wants him to change everything so that the parents, his political parents of his fiance, don't know the real lifestyles. This, of course, is a weak part of the film because a lot of this is very sitcom material, with various shenanigans happening. However, it's got a great payoff in the third act, with a fantastic last line in the film that I won't give away, but it put Gene Hackman in an absolute hilarious light. I really enjoyed this film, went to it twice, and it was, of course, a remake of a French film that, and it goes pretty much shot for shot of the French film from 1978, and I don't speak French well, so I'm not going to butcher that film's title, but I think it's Birds of a Feather in English. Well, this is The Birdcage, and both films are terrific. If you're French, enjoy Birds of a Feather, because it's just as good. This one here has a wonderful shot in the opening as the titles are coming and the camera's going across this water and going towards the land and the lights and the nightclub, and then you're following Robin Williams around as he's making sure everything's in order at the nightclub. You get a feeling of who his character is. Robin Williams is fantastic in this movie, and I've always been a fan of his, and going way back, and he's great here. This is one of his best performances, and Nathan Lane is so over the top in a great way, as his partner in drag, who only wants to help out his Williams' son when his ex-wife is late showing up for the dinner party. So somebody's going to show up to be the mom to impress these political parents. And Nathan Lane is really good, especially in the moments where he's having heart-to-heart, where he doesn't have to be over the top, But he's the kind of over the top that works, And Gene Hackman is so funny. Gene Hackman is great in pretty much anything, from the French Connection to this. He can do comedy, action, he can do drama. Gene Hackman is top notch. And he sells it here as this political leader, and Diane Weiss as his wife. And you got Hank Azaria as one of the club workers who can't seem to stand on his feet very well. I really enjoy The Birdcage. It's not a perfect film. Definitely very sitcomish, and it won't be for everybody, but it was definitely for me. A great looking film. I give The Birdcage an 8 out of 10. Follow that up, also March 8th, is Fargo. Fargo is, of course, the Coen brothers, and although they have done films that they were recognized for like Blood Simple, Raising Arizona, they really didn't get into that real big spotlight until Fargo. And then they really hit the spotlight with The Big Lebowski, which was the film they made after this, and my favorite of their films. But Fargo is great too. Fargo's set in that snowy atmosphere, involving a car salesman played by William H. Macy, who is scheming the hostage taking or the kidnapping of his wife by these two ruthless kidnappers played by Steve Buscemi and Peter Stormare, and they're to hold her hostage. The problem is everything goes wrong. Everything goes wrong. Nothing goes right. And William H. Macy trying to correct wrongs and constantly getting thrown back into wrong. He can't get communication with the kidnappers, and then of course the father of his father-in-law wants to give the ransom money, and so much goes wrong. And Macy is great here. And the star performance, I think, is Frances McDormand, who plays a pregnant policewoman who's got a knack for sarcasm and sensibility, and just knows exactly the right thing to say, right down to a very graphic wood chipper scene where, she just knows exactly what to say. But she's the hero of the film, and without being supernatural about it, and she won the Oscar, and she deserved it, and you got Steve Buscemi and Peter Stormare as the two kidnappers, both very, very different. Stormare very haunting and silent, whereas Buscemi very talkative and frustrating, so it's humor. If you love the Coen brothers humor, you'll like this. I know the wood chipper scene is definitely a highlight for some people. It's a little much, I think, but still, this film still gets a 9 out of 10. So fantastic. It's definitely one of the Coen brothers' best films. And also, on March 8th, what I would call one of the worst films of the year, Hellraiser for Bloodline. From my vantage point, I think this was the only Hellraiser film that we had in our theaters. And I remember we got Black Sheep late, and I ended up, because it was released, of course, in February, but we got Black Sheep late and ended up playing in the same theater as Hellraiser Bloodline. It played first, and then Hellraiser Bloodline played after, and I didn't like either film. I was never a big Hellraiser person. I got a lot of respect for the first movie. I've seen bits and pieces of the other ones. I'm not a big fan of over-the-top, gross, graphic, puke out your guts violence. I could really do without it. But I do have a lot of respect for that first movie. This one here I thought was pure shit. I mean, it takes place in a space station, and of course a lot of it is narrated by somebody who goes into the past, and the Cenobites ended up showing up. And by the way, did I note that this is directed by Alan Smithy? So somebody didn't fucking like it. So I guess my criticism is warranted, because whoever directed it didn't like it any better than I do. The special effects are fine, and the bloodline of the subtitle pretty much is a transcent of evil through time. like spending 2 hours watching the shit. I give Hellraiser Bloodline a 2 out of 10, which is being incredibly fucking generous to it. Definitely see Fargo or the Birdcage over this garbage. Next, we're going to skip ahead to March 22nd for a couple of movies. One good, one not so good. The not so good one is Diabolique, starring Sharon Stone and Isabella Janti. And this, of course, is a remake of the 1955 film. I don't know who directed the 1955 film, but I've seen it. The 1955 film is excellent. Please check that one out as opposed to the 1996 one from the director of National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, which I also urge you to check out over this shit. Because this 1996 Diabolic just basically takes a 1955 film and just adds a lot of sex, violence, and exploitation to it that it didn't fucking need. You got Chaz Palminteri playing a headmaster who's abusive to his wife, played by Isabella Janti, and abusive to Sharon Stone, who's one of the teachers / mistresses. So Stone and Janti decide that they're going to kill him. And of course, this happens early in the film. They drown him, and of course, the body doesn't seem to be... It seems to go missing. The original film made this fucking scary. This one here just took the original film, showed us a lot of sex, a lot of nudity, a lot of violence, so much of it graphic. It was shit. Watch the original 1955 Diabolic. I believe I heard Alfred Hitchcock wanted to remake the film, but ended up doing Vertigo instead, which good on him because Vertigo was great. And so was the original Diabolic. Do not see the 1996 film. I'll give it a 4 out of 10 because it is a slick looking film. There's definitely the plot definitely had a lot of potential. I mean, the plot still worked, just not in this film. This film started out fine, ended up being shitty. But I'll give it a 4. Certainly better than Hellraiser Bloodline, so I'll give it that. But on the same date, on the 22nd of March, we had the first of 2 Spike Lee films of the year. Get on the Bus was not something I was really all that interested in, but Girl 6, definitely. We didn't even get Girl 6 here, but Spike Lee, he's done some stuff I really like. I love Bamboozled, Summer of Sam, Black Klansman, and there's probably some not even coming to my mind, but Girl 6, that is a slick-looking film, full of color, full of neon, and I love the topic of it. It's about this phone sex business. You got Teresa Randall playing a failed actress, or should I say an actress that's not going to reduce herself, because she's in an audition for Quentin Tarantino, who wants her to take her top off, and she goes for it, but at the same token, she's disgusted and really doesn't want to reduce herself to that. So she ends up being dropped by her agent, her manager, and needs to know where to go from there. Her ex-boyfriend, her ex-husband, Isaiah Washington is a thief or a kleptomaniac, which adds a little something interesting in it. But you do have some interesting cameos in here, not just with Quentin Tarantino, but I mean, Spike Lee appears in this film. You also got Madonna as one of the people that gives her the rules of phone sex and these clubs and stuff, and that's kind of interesting. But the best part of the film is the part about the phone sex, because she has to act. she has to get into these characters, and sometimes she gets in a little too deep. Because she has to make these fantasies come to life to these people over the phone. The one problem I find this film has is its tone. I mean, for Spike Lee, fine director, and he does a great job here, but he doesn't know whether the film wants to be a comedy, a drama, or a thriller. And it has a hard time balancing the three. But nonetheless, with the subject in mind, and Teresa Randall playing a great lead in this, she doesn't have a lot of leads, but I liked her in this. I give Girl 6 a 9 out of 10. Check it out. Certainly an interesting curiosity piece. The last film I'm going to speak about came out March 29th, 1996. I'm a big Steve Martin fan, so I wanted to see Sergeant Bilko. And Sergeant Bilko, of course, he plays this very flamboyant, very happy-go-lucky sergeant. And all the people in his, all of his recruits love him because he allows gambling and partying and all this free-spirited stuff. And you got Dan Aykroyd as one of his superiors who plays a nice guy, but kind of Steve Martin can just get stuff by him. The antagonist of the film, of course, is Phil Hartman in one of his last roles before his untimely death. But he wants to expose Sergeant Bilko. And one of the ways he wants to do it is to try to get his ex-fiancée away from him. Glenn Headley, of course, gives Sergeant Bilko 30 days to get his act together because she's tired of waiting. I think the performances are great in this, but this is not one of the stronger Steve Martin movies. I mean, the screenplay is pretty much by the numbers, not much of a plot, and often very predictable. You kind of know where it's going. And with the message behind it, it kind of gives kind of a wayward, one cheater goes, the other cheater wins, you know. What can I say to that, you know? So the writing of this film is very, very weak, but the performances allow it to be viewable, you know. It's directed by Jonathan Lynn. It's a good-looking movie, but I can only give it a 5 out of 10. It kind of meets me halfway, but I say look at it if you're a big Steve Martin fan, and I am, you know. But in comparison to some of his other films, like he's definitely done stronger movies than this, like The Jerk or Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and you know, stuff like The Man with Two Brains, and I could go on. He's done a lot of stronger stuff than this, and this was very simple, but it's Steve Martin, and if you're a Steve Martin fan like me, then this is worth checking out. So, bottom line, going back through this list again, The Birdcage, an 8 out of 10. Fargo, a 9 out of 10. Hellraiser 4 Bloodline, 2 out of 10. Diabolic, 4 out of 10. Girl 6, a 9 out of 10. And Sergeant Bilko, 5 out of 10. Best film of the bunch, going between Fargo and Girl 6, I'm going to give the edge to Fargo. Because if I was to recommend one of the two, and I love Girl 6, but Fargo, I think, is the best one of the ones, my selection of the months. However, my favorite of the month goes to The Birdcage, because I did go see that twice, and I have that on Blu-ray, and that is I feel like I'm going through that nightclub, and I feel like I'm part of that nightclub scene as Robin Williams is going around, you know. Kind of reminds me in many ways the opening of Boogie Nights, you know, as Robin Williams is going around and making sure everything is this and that and everything's together. He's just balancing a lot of plates on sticks as he goes. So The Birdcage, definitely my favorite of the movies I brought up. The worst one? Hellraiser 4 Bloodline. You know, I like that first one. I can't say I know enough about the others to really comment. But this one here, holy cow. It's a shit show. It belongs in the trash compactor. Cut that Bloodline off. Of course they didn't, because they got a bunch of direct-to-video ones that came after. But this was the last theatrical one. Why? Because Alan Smithy directed it. So that pretty much says it all. So folks, get out of your birdcage. Check out Fargo. Check out Girl 6. Check out The Birdcage. And if you're a big Steve Martin fan, you might even want to look at Sergeant Bilko. Otherwise, peace out, have a good night, and we'll see you with April 1996 shortly.